medium of our time, circuitry, profoundly involves men with one another. Information force, our electrically configured world has forced us to move from the habit of classification. No longer build serial block by block. We can no longer build serial block by block. Instant communication.
Where am I? In the village. What do you want? Information. Whose side are you on? That would be telling. We want information. 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 You won't get it. By hook or by crook. We will. Who are you? The new number 2. Who is number 1? You are number 6. I am not a number. I am a free man.
I'm a psychologist by training, so all my degrees are in cognitive science. But I live in these other departments, so information science and communication.
Hello, folks. After several weeks, possibly even a month, of immersing myself in the Mandela effect community and coming away with field intelligence, human intelligence, all sorts of extrapolations and interpolation that have led me to believe that, yes, the Mandela effect is a real effect in the most normal stature, but I would like to explore some of the details and some of the concepts I believe are behind the real Mandela effect, the actual system theory of the Mandela effect, or how we co-inhabit the reality as information inside of the electronic papoose, if you will, inside of the nursing womb of the matrix. Enjoy.
All media are extensions of some human faculty, psychic or physical. The wheel is an extension of the foot. The book is an extension of the eye. Clothing is an extension of the skin. Electric circuitry, the medium of our time, is an extension of the central nervous system. The media, by altering the environment, evoke in us unique ratios of sense perceptions. The extension of any one sense alters the way we think and act, the way we perceive the world, and the way we perceive our own bodies. When these ratios
by
change,
following logic and reason, without chasing the marketing dollar, and advancing truth in the process of understanding the Mandela effect, we come to the conclusion, perhaps, that it is nothing more than a sociological contagion being dropped into the noosphere pool, or the noosphere pool, the internet. And if you pay attention to the trends, if you pay attention to who is accessing the Mandela effect, it peaked around 2015 in the summer, and only first world countries have access to the Mandela effect, propagating and diffusing and discussing the Mandela effect. Because if you are not exposed to the social contagion, like a virus in ecology, you will not habituate your thoughts to the process of the propagated facts or illusion of facts. And what I'm trying to say is that the self-affirmation, the self-referential psychology, the groupthink, the doublethink, is all embedded, like the code on the internet. It's all embedded inside of the neurons. When people are absorbing through the brave neuron world of the internet, absorbing the information that we call the Mandela effect, they are bound to encode and decode the process because humans are pattern-seeking creatures.
Many different types of networks. The classical example of this being the diffusion of some disease through a population. But we might be talking about how the loss of one species in an ecosystem has an effect on others, or the spread of some information within a group of people. More formally, we call this spreading on a network propagation or diffusion. How diffusion happens and how long it takes is defined by a number of different parameters. We'll just list the primary factors involved here before looking at them individually. Firstly, we have some infectiousness metric, where we're talking about how infectious is the phenomena that is spreading on the network. A corollary to this is asking how resistant are the nodes to this contagion, giving us a resistance parameter. Next, we need to consider the topology to the network. Obviously, this diffusion is taking place along the connections within the network, meaning different structures to the connections and different degree distributions.
So, obviously, people who are connected to the internet, this instant simultaneous communication device, will be infected by the social contagion. And how this works is with any other verbalized form of information or encoded and decoded form of information, you will find that you have concentric ripples. And what I mean by that is, here's the point of information. So this here is the idea of the Mandela effect. Right here. What that does inside of the internet is it creates concentric circles. Alright? So you have concentric circles going around and around as a ripple effect through the environment, through the information environment. So each time somebody propagates a new rumor or a new theory, a new Mandela effect, you have several things going on. You have concentric information contagions being spread sociologically through the internet. And then you have the loop, the feedback loop of the encoding and decoding based upon self-referential psychology. And you also have self-affirmation at play, you have doublethink at play, you have group speak, group think at play. The reason why I would like to say it's doublethink at play is because if you think that you remember one thing a certain way, and you know, doublethink itself is kind of the opposite of cognitive dissonance, because you accept the two meanings and values simultaneously. So anyways, if you believe that this happened X way, but then you also think in a different timeline it happens Y way, these X and the Y's, what they do is they conflict. They create tension in your neurons. And that in itself is doublethink, and it's built to demoralize and confuse the general populace and the masses. So through the Mandela effect, they can, as Thomas Pynchon said, get people asking the wrong questions so they do not have to worry about the correct answers. People exploring the Mandela effect are mainly exploring it and capitalizing on it, when in truth, the actual Mandela effect can be studied from a psychological, sociological point of view.
A mosquito can only bite one other creature at a time, but a person can broadcast a message to possibly millions of other people at any given instant, thus enabling a much more rapid contagion rate. We might also add time to our model here, capturing how nodes may be infected for only a brief period of time before recovery, as would be the case with the spreading of many diseases or some trend in fashion. Next, we need to look at the topology of the network to understand how something is likely to spread across it. The primary factor here being simply the overall degree of connectivity to the network. Obviously, the more connected it is, the faster something should spread across it. But also, we would need to look at the average shortest path length to get an idea of how many edges a phenomena would have to traverse in order to affect the whole system. We also need to analyze the degree distribution to understand how centralized the network is, as centralized networks with major hubs can enable rapid local and global diffusion. For example, modern broadcast media has arisen hand in hand with the modern nation state, as it is only through these centralized hubs that uniform information can rapidly disseminate to a large population, and thus a key component in creating a sense of national culture and cohesion. Without these centralized hubs, diffusion can be a lot slower and become heterogeneous as it spreads out. We also need to ask whether this dissemination is random or strategic. That is, whether there is some logic behind the promotion and dissemination aimed at strategically affecting nodes that have a high degree of connectivity and thus enabling a more rapid diffusion. Many forms of diffusion can be modeled as random. A virus has no logic telling it to attack creatures that have lots of physical contact with others. We might say the same of financial contagion. Toxic assets don't themselves choose where to end up in the network and which nodes to affect. These are factors that are defined by other dynamics. But some diffusion processes are strategic. For example, military strategy is often specifically designed to attack a critical node in an opposition's military or infrastructure network, in the hope that this shock to a critical node will then propagate to its dependent nodes, and thus have a greater effect than simply choosing to attack any node at random.
So the question remains, why would so many people be propagating the same rumor? So this goes into the compartmentalized hierarchy of information and how all systems undoubtedly consume each other ecologically. So on the bottom you have the people tuning in, you have the listeners, the viewers, right? In a market, the person at the top would be the emanation or the actual propaganda master of ceremonies. So these individuals may knowingly manipulate the analytical data for market value. So people making roundtables, people doing discussion videos, people every single day trying to come up with the Mandela effect are not interested in the truth. They're more or less exploiting a sociological phenomenon, and they're trying to get rich quick. And unfortunately, these people are easy to see through if you have the right mind and eye for it.
Lastly, we'll just touch upon the topic of complex contagion. The simple contagion model we've been describing so far is essentially binary, meaning either a node is affected or not, and within this model, all that matters is whether one other node affects it or not. Complex contagion, in contrary, is the process in which multiple sources of exposure to a phenomena are required before an individual adopts that change in state.
So why are so many people interested in the Mandela effect if it is nothing more than a sociological contagion? Well, the question ultimately boils down to, why are so many people fooled? See, the way information theory and systems work in propaganda models, you can repeat and reinforce and exploit the natural neuroplasticity of a human individual to the point that they will accept anything as doctrine or dogma, whether or not they have integrity, morals. It's beyond that, because if enough creators on YouTube start suggesting that Mandela effect is real, they will, in fact, create an artificial demand. And of course, they have endless supply of BS. They have endless supply of rhetoric, endless supply of speculation. And when pseudoscience is not critiqued. Now, one more thing I decided to add. For those of you who are going to say, oh, Ouroboros principle, you shouldn't listen to the smart people, they're deceiving you. Yes, there is occult knowledge. Sure, absolutely. The hidden discretion, the compartmentalized information, it exists. It's a matter of national security, if you will. But the truth is, for those of you that want to say, oh, the smart people are deceiving you, I must ask you this. You can say that, but the problem with all of that is you use the smart people's technology every day. Did you design a vehicle? Did you design a computer? Did you put a man on the moon? Oh, it may have not exist, but what I'm saying is that smartphone, this internet, everything you ever use is the creation of people, most likely smarter than you. And if they're not smarter than you, well, they applied their brain to better topics. They didn't sit around and discuss haphazardly a bunch of tomfoolery. And the mumbo-jumbo pseudoscience behind the Mandela effect is unbelievable at points. In fact, the New Age solipsism is also unbelievable. But I'll leave it rest at that. So, for any of you looking to attack me on that front, why don't you turn off your computer? Why don't you stop taking antibiotics? Why don't you refute all of the smart people's technologies because they're deceiving you, and go crawl under a rock? You have this lack of dialectical confrontation, and you have, in my eyes, a failure to actually confront the hard realities of being. Because in an emotionally mature world, people are not going to accept that only positivity or solipsism is the way of life, because we know that objective reality is a co-creation, and we know that multiple people bring together the reality, and not everything is centered around the self, as solipsism says. And so when you come across creators on YouTube that say they want to stay positive, or they're motivational speakers, or they have all these exploits, these hacks into your neurons, what they're really admitting to is being a slave to the marketing dollar and being a slave to the hedonistic pleasure centers of entertainment. And what I'm getting at is essentially the fact that the people who say that you have to stay positive are not at all considering the truth, concerning themselves with the true vibrations of reality. And they would like you to believe in what they create for the dollar of the analytical marketing scheme, what I would call the brave new world scheme, to design a demand that they can always supply, design a demand that always says, I'll make you feel better, buddy. I'll make you feel good. So please, if you're actually looking to awaken and find yourself being consumed by these people that are only interested in the views, the likes, the positivity, then I advise you to go to the library, open up some books, expose yourself to something that is outside of your comfort zone. That's the only way you can grow and develop. These people preaching solipsism and this new age garbage, they are not familiar with what reality actually is. And I have a right to my opinion, you have a right to your opinion. So, for those who do not like this message that the Mandela effect is a social contagion and you're engaging in doublethink through the demoralization and confusion of your brain, I just want you to really stop and think about the things you consider to be truth and true. Because you can be fooled.
Men prefer a false promise to a flat refusal. Cicero. Doublethink is when one believes in two contradictory beliefs at the same time. It is the opposite of cognitive dissonance. The ability to tell lies and genuinely believe them, and to forget any facts that are inconvenient. Advancing doublethink is the elite's defense mechanism from any challenge to their power. The elite know that propaganda will eventually be exposed. But if they can make you lie to yourself, and that was accepted as truth, then they can form a new reality.
They get away, but I'ma catch ya. Wanna compare yourselves to them? Well, guess what, homeboy, you don't match up. I'm my own individual, so I know it isn't true just because you say it is. Cause anything that's truth got proof that ain't you, it's simply just the way it is. Sing.
Well, Sarah, groupthink is a psychological phenomenon that occurs within a group of people in which the desire for harmony or conformity in the group results in an irrational or dysfunctional decision-making outcome. Group members try to minimize conflict and reach a consensus decision without critical evaluation of alternative viewpoints, by actively suppressing dissenting viewpoints, and by isolating themselves from outside influences.
The basic conditioning or shaping of populations is done not by programs for various media, but by the media themselves and by the very language we take for granted. Direct propaganda aimed at modifying opinions and attitudes must be preceded by propaganda that is sociological in character. Slow, general, seeking to create a climate, an atmosphere of favorable preliminary attitudes. After this preparation of the ground, the whole culture ground itself must be mobilized. Not messages, but the new configuration of the whole ground constitutes propaganda. Propaganda must be total. The propagandist must utilize all of the technical means at his disposal. The press, the radio, the TV, movies, posters, meetings, door-to-door canvassing, that is, the media themselves and the whole cultural ground, are forms of language and of what Bacon termed idols of the marketplace. The transforming power of language is recognized by contemporary phenomenology and linguistics as well. So the point is the Mandela effect itself is a form of propaganda made to confuse, demoralize, and divide the populace. It is a social contagion. It is meant to exploit the solipsism of the New Age. It is meant to exploit the marketeers. It is meant to exploit the self-referential psychology. And through this propaganda, this brainwashing, people are distracting themselves from the broader truth, or the truth that should be put under the microscope. Thank you for watching, and I hope that this does not cause too many concentric ripples. Namaste, as they say. Peace be with you, and be seeing you.